Right, let's get into it. We've got Leicester on Monday evening at the London Stadium. It's a big game. I've rewatched Leicester versus Wolves. I know you'll be thinking I'm a saddo, and I probably am, but I did want to try and get to grips with what Leicester could at least present to West Ham. I know they struggled towards the end of the last season, but they have gone into this season with the same vigour, the same quality. I think they've made some brilliant signings. I think Samare came on later in the game. I think that gives us a little bit of a look as to what Brendan Rodgers could do with the midfield. Does feel like a bit of a guessing game with Brendan because of the way that his team will play. He can go between playing with the wing backs. He can play 3-5-2. Feel like at times Barnes would be really close to Jamie Vardy, or he could go 4-2-3-1. And I imagine he'll set up in a 4-2-3-1. He'll go with a relatively strong side. Obviously, Schmeichel in goal. I think the weak point of this Leicester side is Daniel Amati. I can't see a player coming in for him just yet. Maybe Vestergaard, possibly. I'm not sure where he's at in terms of match fitness. I know he's had that transition over from Southampton. And I think, look, to be fair, Vestergaard and Marty, these are players that can be got at because of their lack of athleticism, because of the fact that they aren't the most pacey. And I don't really want to try and reduce the argument just to that. But you look at the way that we played against Newcastle with our attacking four and the way that Antonio can play, the way that we played against Vestergaard as well towards the end of last season. I think there are weaknesses there, but their midfield is one of the most balanced in the Premier League. I think it's a bit of a cliche thing to say that this game will be won and lost in the midfield, but it is the truth, in fairness. Leicester, Tielemans and Ndidi for me are a fantastic pairing. We look at Soucek and Rice. I definitely think they're up there. I think there's an argument that Rice and Soucek could be the best partnership in the division. But let's talk about Youri Tielemans, because he's a player that I think has gone from strength to strength over the past couple of seasons at Leicester. You watch him against Wolves as well. I feel that he's becoming a little bit more adventurous. Brendan Rodgers is allowing him to get further forward. Bringing in Samare does give them a nice balance of three-man midfield at times. And does give Tielemans the license to get on the ball, to work more in the transitions. Yes, of course, he's not a lightning-quick player. He's not direct. He isn't going to stand up players and beat them 1v1. But he has got a brilliant passing range. He's got a fantastic football brain. He's able to work off of the front men at times. He's a creative source. And I think if West Ham can nullify him and push him into deeper areas like we did in the first game last season at the King Power Stadium, then I think we've got a chance of negating them. And, I don't want to go too far away from Wilfred Ndidi, who, again, provides a similar role as to what Declan Rice will, protecting the back four at times, dropping in. He can counter-press. Maybe Rodgers will look to do that if West Ham try and press them a little bit higher. But let's talk about the number 10 for Leicester, because I imagine they'll play with one. Now, it'll either be someone like an Ayoze Perez, but I would imagine it'll be Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy will play. James Maddison. And look, I'm a real big fan of James Maddison. I think had he been more consistent last season, had he played more games, had we seen a lot more of him, I felt that he was adding goals to his game. He's a creative source. He's fantastic from set pieces and deliveries. He's a clever player. And, in the modern day age of number 10s that float and play between the half spaces and the lines that are athletic, Maddison, for me, it feels like a little bit of a throwback in that he can pick the ball up from distance. He can play a through ball when he's got the vision, but he can take shots and he's a dangerous player. But to the original point, that only works if you can get the ball to him. It only works if Tielemans and Ndidi can service him and play through the midfield. And West Ham were fantastic last year. Perez is a different type of player, maybe not as cute as James Maddison. We stopped the service getting into them, and it really restricts Leicester's creative source. And looking at it from an opposition's point of view, I think Leicester have multiple ways of trying to play into this game. They can use the wide areas. They can use the wide spaces. I was really impressed with Thomas on the left-hand side for Leicester, and I think he'll be a threat. And the way that he can sit a bit deeper, he's very good in winning 1v1 situations, but he's got the pace and he can create the overlap. And he'll create the natural width on that left-hand side when Harvey Barnes comes in a bit central, and both him and Jamie Vardy will work off each other in quite an unorthodox front two. And you look at the right-hand side as well with Ricardo Pereira, again, got the assist for Jamie Vardy on Saturday. He's a fantastic player as well that I think hasn't really been fortunate with injuries, had a really major injury at one point, and he was up there in terms of assists, I think, with Trent Alexander-Arnold at one point in the past few seasons. So him getting back gives them another dimension. And I think where we played them previously, there was a real expectancy on Leicester to try and break us down, play through the lines. And listen, when they got their 2 goals against us at the London Stadium last season, it was because of that. And it was because West Ham sat a bit deeper. But the fact that now they can use the wide areas and they can use the central areas does give a lot more for West Ham to contend with. So I'm going to put up now West Ham's predicted 11. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it's going to be a lot different from the last game. But Sit back, enjoy, and have a look. And there we have it. No surprises there. Look, I've spoken about it in the post-match regarding Newcastle. I just thought our front four was fantastic at times. We're being more progressive with the ball. We're getting the fullbacks a little bit further forward. I think we're developing as a team. You know, we've gone really from the beginning of last season, particularly when those wing-backs came in, to being a side that works purely on the counter. We were really effective at that. And we used our ability to sit behind the ball, create the low block, and then use the set pieces to win games. And as the season went on, I think West Ham, particularly with the introduction of Jesse Lingard, we added a little bit more. But David Moyes has really cottoned on to the idea that we do struggle to break down low block teams. And this is a different type of game. And it does make me think, how will West Ham approach this? Because in both games against Leicester, we played two different styles. We played the wing-backs, we sat behind the ball, and we tried to progress and press in the midfield at times and stop them and force them into the wide areas. And we negated them. At other times, particularly last season in the London Stadium, we sat behind the ball and we hit them on the counter. And we were fantastic with Lingard and Jarrod Bowen. So there are two looks that West Ham can try and employ in this game. I think my concern would be regarding possibly someone like Aaron Cresswell. Now, I think Cress, to be fair to him in an attacking sense, is offering us a lot more in terms of breaking down teams. And this Leicester team, let's be honest, they're not compact. They'll look to play high and wide. If Vestergaard's in the side as well, there's a vulnerability there. He'll look to play a little bit further up. And they'll use Ndidi to try and give them a little bit of protection. The one thing about Leicester is they are versatile in terms of how that they can attack West Ham. They are fluid in terms of formations when they're on the ball. But the one thing is, defensively, they aren't going to go away from the way that they want to play. Want to be on the front foot, want to get on the ball, and want to try and progress the ball and move it relatively quickly. So it does give West Ham an option here in terms of we can sit behind the ball, we can give them it. My concern with playing in that manner is, I think when Leicester are able to get on the ball in those central areas as well, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the attacking players, Fornals, Bowen, Ben Rama, to try and engage Tielemans and Ndidi. And I think whilst that isn't really a problem, and whilst it done effectively, it could really hurt them, and West Ham could really hurt that high line. You worry that when you start making it a pressing match a little bit further up, they are going to find its space in behind. And we've got to talk about Craig Dawson in this instance, because Jamie Vardy is one player that will not drop from that front line. And it does give people question marks. I thought where Wolves were relatively successful against Leicester, and I know they lost, but in the second half and even for periods in the first half, was the fact that they did sit behind the ball at times. They pressed in packs. They pressed 2 or 3 in the wider areas, and they kept it compact in the central areas. Now, the way West Ham played against Newcastle, Soucek, Declan Rice, pressing higher, trying to win the ball, and then really stepping off Saint-Maximin, I think that would suit Leicester for us to kind of flip between the two. So I do think it's not really a conversation about the attacking midfield 3, and we'll talk about them in terms of how we can affect Leicester. But the two defensive midfielders, I know Soucek more of a number 8, Declan probably more of a number 8 when you see him in the last game. I think they're really going to have to give protection to Craig Dawson. And in particular, people will cite that Ogbonna wasn't great. I thought the difference with Ogbonna is whilst he can be outpaced, while he sometimes lacks that athleticism against pacey forwards, direct forwards, and tricky wingers, the one thing he will do is he reads the game incredibly well. Now, Craig Dawson showed a vulnerability in terms of allowing players to run off him, to run in front of him. And with someone like Jamie Vardy, who will play on the shoulder, that's not only happy just to play in those central areas, it's happy to stretch the game if need be, that Dawson gets pushed into positions either where he's not aware or either where he's not comfortable. And I think the role of the two defensive midfielders for us in this game has to change. It doesn't mean that, obviously, that we can't go and progress with the ball if Declan Rice gets on it, if Soucek gets on it and move it forward. I think that's where West Ham really hurt teams in those transitions. But in terms of without the ball, I think we're really going to have to be structured and disciplined. And like I said earlier, with someone like Aaron Cresswell, when you look at the way Leicester can play, if they start creating overloads in the wide areas, you've got Thomas on the left-hand side, can try and partner up with Harvey Barnes if they want to really overload that side. I'm more comfortable with Soufal, also more comfortable with Bowen in front of him. But then there's going to be a lot of pressure on Pablo Fornals. If you look at the right-hand side, if Vardy pulls to that side, if Maddison's able to kind of form a little bit of a triangle and Pereira's getting really high and wide, then I think that's where Cress will struggle, because he struggles to deal with players with directness and pace that can get him beyond him. Listen, I really, to be honest, I think Cresswell's improved massively under David Moyes, but that is a weakness for me. But let's talk positives. What West Ham can do to Leicester. I think you look at the attacking four, the movement, the ability to overload those central areas. I think this will be a real showcase. And look, I'm at the game, so in person to see this as well. How West Ham can keep the ball in the final third and put pressure on Tielemans and Ndidi. Because Ndidi's a fantastic defensive midfielder. There's no getting around it. And Tielemans is a deep-lying playmaker. And I know he's kind of moving between now being a little bit more progressive. Can we keep the ball well enough in those final third areas, particularly behind Mikel Antonio, to cause them a real problem? Because there is a genuine opportunity here for those three to get on the ball, overwhelm the central areas, and start pulling Tielemans in and out of position, as well as Ndidi. And I think that once you can do that, you do have defensively, particularly with the centre-backs, Amati being one, even Vestergaard if he does play, you're giving options for Antonio to get involved, because then if they can't deal with it in Ndidi and Tielemans, then someone like a Vestergaard, a Marty, Soyuncu, I think Soyuncu probably the stronger of the centre-backs, will have to go and press and command it. And if I'm honest, I think both Marty, maybe not Vestergaard, but certainly Soyuncu are regressive in trying to win that ball. So if West Ham can keep the ball well enough, composed enough in possession in that final third, space will arrive. And I think that's where Mikel Antonio can come into his own. I don't expect Mickey, and I think it would be better for Mickey to try and play on the shoulder of those a little bit. And I think, that happens when West Ham are able to get on the ball a lot. It happens when we're able to get into the final third and we push our defensive line a little bit higher, that all of a sudden those attacking three midfielders in there. But how it starts is Mickey really taking it in, using his hold-up play and introducing them. So I think there are real opportunities, and the movement off Mickey as well, given the fact that Ben Rama's now moving in behind. Bowen naturally can do it anyway for Nows in terms of his eye for a pass and his understanding of that role. I think in those central areas, we cause them a hell of a lot of issues. And it isn't really just for Leicester. I think there's a lot of teams in this division that West Ham can hurt in an attacking sense, and we are playing better football. The only concern would be that if West Ham feel the need to push forward Soufal and Cresswell, maybe too early. I'm not saying don't do it at all, because I think there is a lot of merit in using the delivery from either wings, from our fullbacks. But I do worry that if we give Leicester the opportunity to counter-attack on us, their transition's very good as well. And I think spaces will start to appear. And it's a very tight game. I'm talking about it in terms of certain areas of the pitch. And that is really because there are just certain avenues that Leicester can get one over West Ham, and there's certain avenues that we can get over them. And there are really small margins in that. But other than that, I think we're looking at two sides that play progressive football, one incredibly good on the transition, one looking to build up and that's got fantastic passing and delivery as well from wide areas. The concern is for me, Jamie Vardy for them. I think he's the outstanding player. You look at the goal that he scores against Wolves, peeling off of centre-backs. That's the worry for me. I think if West Ham can nullify that, if Soucek, Rice give the protection to those two centre-backs, and when we've got the ball, our attacking midfield three are really overwhelming Leicester. Their high line, enticing them to be aggressive. Spaces will appear. And I think Rodgers may be very wary of the fact that when West Ham are given space to operate in, I just feel that that's our bread and butter. That's where we absolutely excel. So in terms of score prediction for this game, I'm going to go 2-1 West Ham. I think Leicester are too good, and I don't think the way that we are going to play, it's going to entice them to have opportunities. I think that's just natural. And I think you even see it in the Newcastle game, if I'm honest. It would have been really simple for West Ham at one point to sit behind the ball. But there is an aggression in the press and how our midfield's moving that I think Moyes wants to implement. So I do think spaces will appear. I think Vardy will get chances. Harvey Barnes will give us problems. But I do think West Ham can really hurt Leicester in their high line, genuinely. And I think, we didn't get to see that attacking midfield three with Antonio at the London Stadium. And we worked it well with Bowen and Lingard, obviously. But I think with Antonio, there's just a different element to it. He can compete in the air physically with Vestergaard and Marty, Soyuncu. And then the movement thereafter, I think, can hurt Leicester. And if Leicester try and push Pereira high up, if they try and push Thomas high up on either side, then they'll be vulnerable in those areas, and West Ham will really come into their own. So I do think we get goals in this game. I do think we punish them. I could be wrong. I've got to be completely honest. I would be happy with the draw. I think that's a really good result. And then we obviously move into the next game against Crystal Palace, which, given their performance against Chelsea, and I know Chelsea are a fantastic team, I think we should go and really get the 3 points. But I struggle to see West Ham falling apart and capitulating. And I was really encouraged, actually, by the mentality we showed against Newcastle, because I think a lot of people outside of West Ham, from what I gather, think that last season was a flash in the pan. Now, by no means are we going to go and be sixth again, but I do think we are at a stage where we're not crumbling. We're not weak anymore. We are a strong team. So I'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining me on this preview. If you did enjoy it, drop a like. It helps the West Ham Way. Check out the West Ham Way Patreon account. Link is in the description below. Obviously, the transfer window is nearly ending, so keep your eye out on that. Check it out. Go and see what you can get over there. There's lots of news, views, interviews. I'm sure you already know this anyway. And then you've got the West Ham Way website. There'll be loads of articles up. Probably a lot of preview stuff similar to this. They'll do post matches as well. So keep your eyes peeled, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm not sure when this is coming out, so do enjoy the weekend if I don't speak to you before then. And I'll see you all very shortly.